Taz Thornton has been there, done it, and seen it in ways that will make you change your view of the world and want to do better. As a high-flying corporate director, she appeared to have the world in her palm. Nobody could see her crumbling beneath the pinstripes. She rebuilt her back after breaking it at age 21, then fought back after the breakdown at 33 that saw her seeking wisdom from shamans and medicine people, as well as using everything in her NLP and coaching toolkit to reconstruct her life. That breakdown turned out to be Taz's breakthrough. And she's now impacting people far and wide as the UK's #1 inspirational breakthrough speaker, best-selling author, seminar leader, and coach. Taz's latest book, Unleash Your Awesome, touches on some of life's toughest experiences with tear-inducing honesty, provides real opportunities to learn and grow whatever life throws at us, and encourages us to stop moaning and start owning. Welcome to Liberate Your Authentic Self with Dr. Andrea Pennington, the prescription for living your life out loud. Well, Taz, I want to first thank you for being here with us at Liberate Your Authentic Self.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Absolute pleasure.
Yes, yes. Well, I loved meeting you in London, and obviously we have a lot in common. Your whole concept of authenticity, integrity, encouraging people to meet the truth of who they are behind all of the masks, which I know you heard me share my story. This idea that you believe that we all have awesome power and potential, but we don't always know how to find it, feel it, and unleash it. I love it. So tell me about this mission you're on of unleash your awesome.
Well, it's precisely that. I mean, I think we all have that connection when we're born. Yeah. And I think that gradually as we go through life, we become conditioned to turn it off. And I think for many of us, if you look at the shamanic cultures, when they talk about the shaman's death, and we talk about, to use Douglas Adams' words, the long dark tea towel of the soul, we all have them. And yet we have a choice then. When these difficult times hit us, I think we can either sink or we can step back for a minute and think, okay, I can wallow in this or I can use this. What is it here for? What is it here to teach me? And to be fair, it took me ignoring a hell of a lot of pebbles and a hell of a lot of boulders before the big stuff came and bowled me over. And I remember having this moment, or several, but the first of those moments I had that made me realize I should be doing something with it was when I broke my back. And I remember, lying flat on this hospital bed where I'd been for 9 hours with my head packed in sandbags and just thinking, I've got to do something with this. I can't just sit here and keep trying to escape from life.
But you were very young at that point. It's not like you were already in your corporate world, recognizing why am I over here in this pinstripe suit? How do you think that it was just the fact that you broke your back and you're laying there immobilized? Or do you think even as a young person, you had this sort of spiritual awareness?
I had a spiritual awareness from being this high. I was one of those weird kids that saw and sensed all the stuff the other kids weren't.
Me too.
One of those.
Me too.
Yeah, I know. I used to have this Mongolian-looking guy. So I cut my headphones there. This Mongolian-looking guy who used to float at the end of my bed when I was a kid. And I remember being very, very small. So I remember having bunk beds, and I was an only child, but I wanted bunk beds so I could invite friends over. So sitting up, peeking over the covers, and this head of this smiling, what again to me now as an adult looked Mongolian, used to just sit there beneath the top bunk, just staring at me. And I used to hide. I'd pull up under the covers, and then I'd tentatively peek back up, and it was still there. And that happened several times. And I used to have several that would come and visit me. And when I was a kid,
did you ever tell anyone? Did you tell your parents or any adults?
I tried, yeah, absolutely. My mum was always quite spiritually aware. There's a bit of a kind of a psychic link going through our family, but I think I'm the first one that actually did anything with it. My mum's got it too. She's got natural healing ability, but she's a bit scared of it in case she does something wrong,
Oh, okay.
so it took me a long time, and I frequently used to talk about the things that I was seeing, the things I was sensing, even through into adulthood, and people would start coming to me if they wanted to know if somewhere had an entity. But yeah, it wasn't until I hit my kind of mid-20s that I started to do something with it. But when that car accident hit, that was in my early 20s. So I was kind of in corporate life, but not as high up as I ended up being. And I'd maneuvered myself into such a position that I felt backed against the wall. I was in an abusive relationship. I was coming to terms with the fact that actually I might like girls. Oh, how could I possibly? All that. I grew up in a very, very small-minded town.
Right.
And all of that hitting, and I didn't know a way out. So I came up with this master plan that seemed like such a wonderful idea at the time, that I didn't want to just go and kill myself, because I didn't want to leave that mess for people. I tried for months and months, and I've done so much work to undo this now. I used to sit and pray to get a terminal illness, honestly. So much work energetically to undo that now. So my plan was to take stupid risks every day. And if at the end of the day I was still here, my spiritual messed up mind at that time believed that somebody or something wanted me to be here. So that was how it happened. And when I got to that point when I broke my back, and lay there and thought, you idiot, you've probably trapped yourself even more, because clearly I'm okay. But when you see men in white coats talking spinal damage, I immediately went to, oh God, I'm going to be paralysed. Of course I wasn't. But that was such a brilliant spiritual ass-kicking that was, do something. You're not seeing this stuff. You're not sensing this stuff. You're not the person that everybody opens up to and brings their problems to. That's not happening for no reason. So you can sink or you can swim, and actually then learn to dive and to fly and to do something with it. So it was always there, but I needed one of those epiphany moments we all talk about so glibly.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is part of our human nature that some of us, like me, some of us do have to hit rock bottom. We do have to have some painful experience that finally we feel like there is no other choice, the only choice is up. So gosh, I have so many questions. I've been dying for this interview for months, right? So, so much to explore, from the shamanism, the seeing entities, the spiritual pact that you must have made at a very early age. So, okay, where do I begin? So first, let's go back to that childhood thing. So you see this face of this Mongolian hovering, just under the upper bunk. And then you said that you saw others. Do you now, excuse me, do you now, in your adult wisdom, do you think they were spirits? Were they ghosts? Were they guardians, angels, or just people who were stuck? What do you think they were? Who they were?
For me, I don't so much see a division between them. For me, there's just energy. And from my worldview, and again, that's not to say that anybody else is wrong, but my belief is that kind of angels, spirits, energy beings, they're all part of the same body. And I think sometimes we as grounded human beings get far too hung up on trying to identify whether it's the ghost of Great Uncle George, rather than thinking, actually, the name isn't really important. What's important is the teaching. So if I look back now, though, the ones that I remember most fully, there was the Mongolian guy that used to float at the end of the bed. There was a guy with a white clerical collar who used to float sideways, kind of just below the ceiling level. And the other thing was, I always felt that one of these guardian spirits had a real connection. One of them really felt kind of sisterly to me, and I never saw her, but I used to sense her a lot. She'd move things, she'd hide things. When I was going through that abusive relationship, there was one particular time where he was being particularly verbally aggressive. And I remember he was standing in my mother's bathroom, and she had, those kind of celebratory things, Russ used to make them, I think, like a satin air balloon that had streamers hanging down. She had one of those hanging outside of the bathroom. And I remember that suddenly the streamers just started to blow. There were no drafts. And then Mum had lots of those mini travel shampoo bottles in her bathroom, and they started flying off the shelf at his head.
Whoa!
And I was like, whoa! And I felt that was again this sister entity. But it wasn't until I got probably into my teens that my mother admitted that I was supposed to be twins.
Oh my
And
gosh.
she'd always felt that my sister was there too.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
So she's been with me forever and a day. I affectionately refer to her as Poppy because that was one of my mum's other name choices. So Poppy was there from a very young age. And the others, she's the only one that's been constant. The others kind of gradually disappeared as I matured. I guess if I wanted to go and quest for them and speak to them, I probably could. But I haven't felt the need to, because since then other guardians have come in, other spirits who feel more appropriate for the now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I want to explore that because, you know, when you talk about your breakdown to break through, you went on a journey and you were seeing shamans and curanderos or medicine people and so on.
Yeah.
But before we get there, I want to talk about the other piece of that. So you had this childhood, you knew that you were kind of different than other kids. And then you found yourself going down a path that, what was it, society? Was it your family that you felt like you needed to go in this well mainstreamed path? Because it sounds to me, when I read your book and I hear about the quote unquote depressive kind of feelings, like not wanting to be there, it seems like it was because of the choices that you made, or that whether it was pressure or whatever. How do you describe that?
It was classic square peg in a round hole. I grew up in a little village on the edge of a mining town, and it was one of those towns where, you know, even after the closure of all the coal mines, everyone still had that attitude. Or as a child, it seems that everyone still had that attitude of, you know, my dad was down the pits and my dad before him was down the pits, and it was good enough for me. And it felt that nobody wanted to get out of that. I mean, I grew up with, we had a family business when I was growing up. My dad was out a lot. He was a lorry driver as I was growing up, so he was in everything still together. I kind of grew up in a bubble, so it was a mix of own business, large family. My mum was one of 8, and so nothing much happened outside of the family because the family was so large. And when I got to school age, again, most of my peers grew up with, again, that small town mentality. You know, we were the ones who were worldly wise, because sometimes we'd go into Birmingham, which was a couple of hours away, and the other kids were just, you know, nearest town. That was such a long way if someone travelled sort of an hour to get somewhere. So I just don't think I realised there was anything else. I don't think I recognised there was anything else. And even when I was getting these strange things coming up, I remember the first time I saw a spirit outside of our house, and it was when we'd been to the ruins of a place in Norfolk. And I remember I was still at primary school, so still very, very young, and there was a tower there, and I saw this lady leaning out of the window of this tower with her arms folded, and I played up to high heavens that my mother and my aunt, who I was with, we needed to go up into that tower because there's a tall tower. It's exciting to a kid. I want to go up there. And then sister didn't go up. Well, we must be able to, because there's a lady in the window. And after much, you know, sleeve tugging, we got there, and the entrance was bricked up. And I remember going into school and writing about this experience and drawing a picture of this lady in the window. Wow. And I think the other parents thought it was a little bit odd. So, again, it was squashed down. My mother would encourage it. Not encourage it, but would allow it. She never tried to close it down. I feel myself very lucky now that my parents never tried to squash it. They didn't try to grow it, but they never squashed it down. And I'm going off at a slight tangent now, but I do wonder if that's what happens with a lot of kids, that we all come into this world with the ability to see and to sense. And when our parents, our peers start telling us that things are silly, we switch them off. Yeah. So all of those times where we hear that someone's seen a spirit and then it's disappeared, has it disappeared, or have we just switched that part of our brain off? Mm-hmm. You know, things like that. So it was always there. Yeah. Well, then
what was your first experience with a shaman? And I know that you teach shamanism in some of your work, because, you know, I'm new to the world of shamanism. I think my first experience was maybe 11 or 10 years ago. But when I've spoken with different shamans, and I'm just back from Peru, having had an interesting ceremony or two.
I can imagine.
But they describe being able to see in other dimensions. You know, a Western person might call these other dimensions, these other realities. And they have said, yes, as a human, we do all have this ability to see into spirit worlds. So whether it's been switched off or deadened or we didn't trust it, in my case, I personally remember switching it off because I didn't know what to do with it. And it seemed kind of scary when I started to have psychic dreams, precognition, knowing things about people on the other side of the earth that I'm like, how should I know this? And when I felt like my soul was traveling, I was like, okay, maybe turn this off. Fortunately, I woke up and I'm able to use it again. But talk to me about what was that first step into the shamanic world for you?
Okay. So when I first started to explore spirituality a little bit more, when I got to the age that I could go to some of these kind of mind, body, spirit fairs and mediumistic nights and go and have readings and stuff, about 1 in every 3 readings I had with somebody, they'd want to train me. They'd tell me I had the gift. I don't believe anyone has a gift, or conversely, I believe we all have it. I don't think it's anything special. And I explored lots of different avenues. I looked into the whole kind of mediumistic route. It didn't feel right at the time. I've done a bit of training in it since because I believe in getting a wide view of things. I looked into spiritualist church. That didn't feel right. Nothing felt right until I was sitting at work one day, and this is a bit of a head melt moment. But the word shamanism started being dropped in my head, and I had no idea what it meant. Not a clue. It was the days before everyone had Google on their desktop. Imagine that now, not having Google at your fingertips. Yeah. So I had to go and research it. And then I found someone only a few miles from where I was working at the time in Kent who was offering these beginners classes in shamanism. And so at the time, in journalism, not paying for anything, for goodness sake, I get this free. Hello, can I come and report on this? Will you give me a free place? Yes, of course I will. So I was all set to go and do that. And then the universe intervened. I can only imagine it must have been the wrong teacher, because the week before I was due to attend, I was on a bus in the middle of London, and the bus was in an accident, and I was laid out with whiplash.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So, okay, that's not the right teacher then. So I just kept looking and kept searching for a while. And I got headhunted to go to another job in another part of the country. Now, I came over here to look at different houses, look at the areas, picked up a book in my local bookshop. It was a historical fiction book. Thought that's interesting. And then just before I moved over, I went to a literature festival, and the woman who'd written that book happened to be speaking there. Oh, well, I'll go and listen. And then it so happened when she was speaking that her career before becoming a full-time author tied into the business I was going to edit magazines for. Oh, well, I'm going to get a feature because that will score me some brownie points. So I arranged this, went to her house, and long story short, it became apparent that she was into the same kind of spirituality. And she said, I'm about to start teaching shamanism. Would you like to come and learn?
Oh, my
Okay,
gosh.
well, so bang, 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 bang. You know, sometimes things are too coincidental to actually be coincidences, aren't they?
Right.
So I went along, I started training with this lady, stayed there for about a year, and then circumstances changed, and I found another shamanic teacher that I ended up settling with, and he was amazing. He was a Danish guy. His name's Chris Lutterchow. And his story, in a nutshell, is that he wanted to learn about shamanism, and he started just traveling to the Americas and turning up on the reservations. And they'd keep kicking him off, and he'd just look around and look for odd jobs that needed to be done. So he'd just keep going and repairing things until eventually they realised he was serious, and they started to train him. So he spent years travelling and learning directly from people in the Americas until they said, go out and teach it. So that's who I ended up with. And then it got deeper when his assistant stepped down to get on with her own stuff, and he needed somebody else to assist it. And at the time I was in, I don't know, probably a 30, 40 strong circle of people. And everybody kept going, me, I want to do it, I want to do it. And I was the only one saying, I don't want to do that. I've got far too many responsibilities. I'm